Hmm. All right, I think so. We shall begin now. Here we go. Welcome back to today's MCD live session. Uh, Today we will be talking about something we did touch a little bit, touch base with a little bit last week. We talked about decision making. We talked about cognitive load. You can say somewhat what we are going to talk about today is related to decision making. It is related to taking tough decisions. And so we're going to discuss how, for us, the familiar pain, it feels much more comfortable than the uncertainty, than something that can be healthy and something that can be safer, something a situation that is not based upon uh, the foundation of you having to go through so much pain, right? But because something is familiar, we choose that. Because uncertainty is something we human beings run away from, right? And we do struggle to move towards something, although we say we want, but there is something that happens internally that stops us from moving towards the safety. And we are going to discuss that today. We're going to discuss what happens when that happens, what is going on in your mind, in your body, when we are not able to decide between safety and danger on the basis of certainty and uncertainty, familiarity and unfamiliarity. Right. So these are the you can say the aspects that we look on when we decide something in terms of danger and safety, right? And how how the human brain is actually designed to think that way. It's it has a lot to do with it. But when people go through traumatic situations, when they go through trauma, when they are living for years in a situation like that, where they are avoiding a decision based on this criteria, then of course this becomes a pattern in their lives. They don't recognize it, and it becomes a lifelong pattern, right? So today we will be talking about this, and before we begin, like always, we are going to start off with bringing ourselves to the center of the discussion, bringing our mind to the center of the discussion, right? And I want you to think about something you have always wanted to, from a lot of time you have been wanting to change something in your life. It could be anything. It could be a bad habit, an unhealthy habit, or it could be a relationship, right? It could be any of that. Relationship change is a major change, right? So it could also be the way you respond to people. Some people, they don't deserve the way we respond to them, but we still do it anyway. So if maybe it could be something you have been, wanting to change. Is it something you have been avoiding? Or it could be a decision you want to make, but you are not able to make. There is something stopping you, but deep down in your heart, you do want that decision. You do want it to happen. You do want it, you can say somehow you're not able to, find a breakthrough, but you really do want it to happen like that. So just think about it. It could be something minor, it could be something major. And what happens inside your heart when you think about it? What is going on when you think about it? Try to just sit comfortably when you do this and relax your body. Try to settle your attention towards that decision, towards that want. And if it feels comfortable, please feel free to close your eyes. Or maybe you can, lower your gaze and think about it if it feels uncomfortable to close your eyes. And try to notice your breathing. You don't have to control it today. Just notice your breathing and similarly, focus on what you have been wanting to do. What happens to your body? What are the physical sensations that occur when you think about that decision? Does it give you like you know, uh, that uncomfortable feeling in your heart, that discomfort of, thinking what is going to happen if I do this? What happens to your heart rate? What happens to your breathing? Try to focus on that. And just for a moment, think that you have made that change. You don't have to think about all the circumstances revolving around that change. Just think that you have made that decision. You have jumped from unfamiliarity to, from familiarity to unfamiliarity, from certainty to uncertainty, but at the same time, you have moved from danger to safety. Think about it. You have made a decision. You have made it happen. You have made it. You have made the change. What is your immediate response to it? Now, what happens in your body? Are you still feeling the fear, the stress, the anticipation? Or you feel anxiety? Or you feel relief that, oh yes, I have finally made it? Are you sad about it? Are you sad about leaving that certain and familiar place? Regardless of the fact that that familiar place was harming you, what happens to your body? What happens to your mind? Though it should be relief if it was for your safety, but you're not feeling safe. Why? What's going on in your mind? What are you thinking? Are you immediately thinking about the reasons you shouldn't have done this? Or about the reasons you should always avoid making a major decision like that? Just notice. You still don't have to go back or change anything. Here again, notice what goes on in your mind. The gaps that your mind is trying to fill with a story. Don't argue with your thoughts. Don't argue with your reactions. Just notice them. And now again ask yourself, what exactly feels uncomfortable about changing, about making this decision? Now, I want you to focus on your breath. And now you're going to do this long breathing with me. I want you to inhale through your nose and exhale from your mouth. Inhale through your nose and exhale from your mouth. Inhale through your nose and exhale from your mouth. The experience of change is uncomfortable. But sometimes what does feel uncomfortable it doesn't have to mean that it's wrong. You might be losing something, you might be losing someone, and it is uncertainty. Most of the times when you are making major life decisions, they are supposed to be uncertain. You don't know what are the consequences of making any decisions at times, even when they are for your own good. Maybe someone is going to react in a way that you did not, want it to be that way. We don't know what life is going to look like afterwards. But most of the time, we avoid a major decision because we think it's unfamiliar, right? So I want you to come back to the room so we can start talking about and understanding the pattern, that why familiarity is so overwhelming, but at the same time, it's something we choose to have instead of uncertainty, right? We also, we often say that at least I know what I'm dealing with. It's not ideal, it's bad, but it's what I'm used to. I would use an example of people who remain in abusive situations, abusive relationships. Deep down in their hearts, they want to escape. They want change. But you would definitely come across statements like this if you have been in interaction with people who are in such situations, that they know that at least I know what I'm dealing with right now. It's a bad situation. It's not ideal, but I'm used to of this. If I leave this situation, what's going to happen later on? People are going to say this, people are going to say that, people are going to question me. Will I get someone who's going to love me the same way? Although in that lovey-dovey situation, we are being abused, we are being humiliated every single day, but you are afraid of what's going to happen. So many things, so many questions. And we usually say these things, like ourselves as well, right? We say a lot of these things. So this is the idea behind the familiar pain versus unfamiliar safety. This is where it is so interesting, because it's not accurate to say that people, consciously choose painful situations, because pain never feels good, right? And no person in the face of this earth wants to have an unhealthy relationship. It's just that for a layman, human behavior is much more complicated than the idea of, leaving and staying in. It's much more complicated. You know, repeated experiences, they teach us what to expect. If you are being repeatedly faced with something, right? We over, we go through all of that thing every single day. What happens is that we develop patterns of prediction in our mind. We try to, become people who can, predict what's going to happen next. We will learn how the other person is going to respond to us if we do this and that. What happens when we speak up? What happens when we withdraw? What is something that is going to earn us the approval of other people? I was talking about the filters through which people make decisions that day in our cohort 1 class, I think so, or two to cohort 2 class. No, it was one. So we were talking about the filters. One of the filters that women usually use is the approval filter when they try to, make decisions. That if I make this decision, will people approve of it? Will I be accepted in the society? So these are the things, that make a such situation predictable. We will know what leads to conflict. We will know, when we need to stop things. So we know what to make and keep things predictable. So the familiar thing has an advantage. We know how to navigate through the familiar situation. Doesn't mean it's healthy. It absolutely doesn't mean it's healthy. It's just that we know about it. So it's the fear of unknown. It's the fear of uncertainty. Like I said, if you spend years in an environment where you constantly have to monitor other people's mood, they know when to stay quiet, when to apologize, when to avoid a situation or a conversation. And it is an extremely exhausting environment. But at the end of the day, why they stay? Because it's predictable. Now, if that person enters a relationship where the other person, they communicate openly. They also disagree and respect disagreement. They don't punish you for having needs or for having opinions. A healthy relationship is one where you are able to engage in a healthy conversation and talk about your needs. But if you lived all your life like that, right? And then you enter into a situation where this is normal, where it's okay to disagree. From the outside, it all looks healthier, for that person who remained in that environment for years. But when you talk about it from the internal viewpoint, it feels strange. It's not something wrong, you know. They may actually become suspicious that how could things be so normal? Why is something not wrong? Right? So they may actually wait for the other person to, suddenly change and, always walk on eggshells thinking that something is going to happen, right? They may, a lot of people, they may also feel uncomfortable receiving care, without a lot of people who have never been praised. They may feel uncomfortable when they receive praise, right? Or compliments. So we have to be very careful with the idea that familiar feels safe. It's just that it's not safe, but it's something that is easier to navigate. A familiar situation can be hard, harmful, but it's just easier to navigate. Someone's pattern becomes predictable, unhealthy pattern becomes predictable, so you know how to respond, how to protect yourself in that situation, right? Now, if we finally make the right decision, let's say if we move on, we will immediately feel relieved at times, but we will not feel like that all the time. Healthy change, it can actually be, it can actually create discomfort in the beginning because it asks us to behave differently from the way we have learned to behave. Oh, this is something I didn't do. Just a second. Okay. Yes. What are the filters, the cognitive filters? Oh, that is something that we're going to discuss in the other lesson because that was a part of the class. So that's a very long topic. But one of them is the approval filter, and the other one is the comparison filter. There are about 3 to 5 filters. One of them is the growth filter. That is one which we have to work towards. The other two ones were control filter. In approval filter, you want to make decisions based on how much people will approve you on the basis of that. Then we have comparison filter. You make decisions on the basis of how you view others. You compare yourself with other people and then you make a decision. The control filter is more like, you just want to have control over things, and that is what makes you base your decisions. That is what try to base your decisions on. We have the growth filter. I can't remember the fifth one, but I'll get back to you with the fifth one for sure. So I think so it was something to do with the safety filter. It was a safety filter that we usually view the world as, an unsafe place, and we try to, always try to, scan for the dangers around us. And on the basis of that, we, base our decisions. On the basis of that, we make our decisions. So we'll definitely talk about that in much more detail very soon because that's a very important topic. Thank you for asking. We'll talk about it in much more detail. But the approval part is what, it's the most common filter that is used by women usually, because it's due to the cultural and social conditioning, that women have to, make decisions on the basis of what other people approve, right? And if people disapprove of it, again, for women, they face much more difficulty with making decisions because they have to, they have to earn the the approval of other people around them. So saying no, being assertive, it sounds like a bad idea for a lot of women. They don't base their decisions based on what they want, on their own values. So we will be talking about it hopefully by tomorrow. We'll touch this topic. So that being said, even when you take a decision like that, even when you make a decision that's healthy, for sometimes it will look difficult for you to accept, and you might even be faced with guilt. You might even face guilt. Now, the older pattern was familiar. Someone asks, then say yes, and the other person is, they are pleased, and they avoid the discomfort of disappointing anyone. Now, the new pattern is different. Someone asks you something, then they pause, they say no, and then they tolerate the discomfort that follows. So there can be a healthier alternative, a healthier behavior, but in the short term, it can feel worse. It can feel worse because it takes your body some time to transition. But in the long term, what's the better option for you? Is it the healthier one or the unhealthy one? It's a healthier one, of course. The initial discomfort, that's the point I'm trying to make. That the initial discomfort is not equal to long-term discomfort. It's just the transition phase that our body takes some time to accept or get used to of, right? All the stress hormones and the chemicals that were used to of being you know um released in the bloodstream every day, that same routine that happened in the beginning, it will take its time to come back to the normal state. It takes some time to get the issue is not the decision, it is the transition period that is difficult. That is the point that I'm trying to make. And there is a big role of being avoidant in such situations. If you have the need to have a difficult conversation with someone and you are very anxious about it, or you can also take the example of having a presentation, class presentation, you are also anxious about it, so you decide not to have it altogether, and in minutes or so you will feel much better about it. The anxiety that you were having initially about that presentation or conversation, that will be gone the moment that presentation is cancelled or you decide not to have a conversation. So that is the avoidance. What happens? That anxiety is dropped when that thing doesn't happen, because you no longer face the situation. What is this avoidance doing? Now your brain has learned something very powerful, that when once you have avoided something, your body got immediate relief. That's how it happened. That's the way your brain gets reinforced about the idea of avoidance. Your brain learned that avoiding the situation got you relief. So now it avoids in every situation, and it avoids taking a new decision just because that avoidance brought you immediate relief and instant gratification. That's how a lot of theories say that beings are. We want instant relief. We want immediate relief. And the next time a situation like this comes up, that avoidance is easier to repeat. And this is one of the basic principles when we talk about reinforcement. This is how negative reinforcement works. Your behavior is more likely to, happen again when it, removes an unpleasant internal experience. Now, the problem is what with this concept? The problem with this kind of reinforcement is that the relief is temporary. The conversation still needs to happen. The resentment may still continue. You still have to present in the third or fourth class. It may have been cancelled today, but you have to present it in the next class. So the situation has now become even more complicated because you gave your brain more time to overthink the situation, right? So you reinforcing that avoidance of some conflicts, conversations, and things. It's adding more to the burden. It's a long-term thing. right? So what do we do after that? We develop pattern where the thing we do to feel better in the current moment, it contributes to feeling worse over time. So you have to ask yourself, what will make this easier now, but harder later? A lot of people who procrastinate, this can be something they relate to. What will make this easier now? If I get done with this, I get to have some 5 to 10 minutes of sleep and rest. Or you can even, ask what might feel difficult now and what might make my life healthier over time. Ask yourself this. Not what is going to make me feel better right now. Think about the long term consequences of things. Think about what is something going to make me feel like in the longer run, right? So, what is going to make me feel better right now? It's going to create a dangerous pattern. It's, putting things on hold because they feel difficult. They will still feel difficult later on, but then you will also be exhausted with the thinking that you had to put into bringing that task to action. So, avoidance is bad. Avoidance does this. And discomfort is also not always danger. So, this is the distinction you have to make in your brain because it's very important when we are trying to change these established patterns over time. If you have never set a boundary, you may feel uncomfortable setting one. If you have always depended on other people for reassurance, then making a decision independently will feel difficult and uncomfortable, right? But we also need to avoid going to the other extreme and telling ourselves that every uncomfortable situation is an opportunity for growth, right? Sometimes, sometimes difficulty or discomfort can also be an important warning. Now, I'm not talking about situations that risk your safety, right? But the point I'm trying to make here is that discomfort doesn't always have to be, equal to danger, right? You just have to distinguish and create a practical way to approach the change, right? So you have to ask yourself these questions. So important that what is this discomfort telling me? You don't avoid discomfort. First of all, discomfort is not bad. You ask yourself, what is this discomfort telling me? Analyze it. Is there an actual risk here that I need to pay attention to? Or am I experiencing the normal uncertainty that comes with doing something new? What is the risk? Is that risk greater than staying? It's comparatively less dangerous to what I'm going through right now. That is the distinguishment, that distinction that requires your active judgment. This is why when we have clients, talking about taking major life decisions, we ask them to give themselves some time to calm and relax their nervous system and their mind because it all affects your judgment. When you are in a state of stress, it affects your judgment. So, in order to take a decision that's actually good for you and to do the risk analysis of a decision, you need to have a clear state of mind so your judgment is not bad. You are able to take a better decision. You can check if that discomfort is a usual discomfort or is it's actually telling us about a potential risk, right? So you need to have that's why we tell as therapists to make a decision in a clear state of mind. Now, you also don't have to go along with your strong vibes and strong feeling. It's, of course, real, but it's again not a complete explanation of how things are going to be, right? So there's a practical way to approach this. The first is to identify what you are actually afraid of. You don't have to say that I'm afraid of change. Be specific. We have been specific about emotions. Then be specific about your emotions and be specific about your decisions. Are you afraid of being alone? Are you afraid of not being loved? So you will Are you afraid of being financially unstable? Are you afraid of regretting this choice in the future? Are you afraid of losing someone's approval, including the social approval, societal approval? Or are you afraid of not knowing what is going to happen next? Then the next step is for you to separate the real risk from the imagined one. If you are leaving a job, for example, there may be financial concerns. For sure, there may be. Those need planning. That is the kind of choice that you don't make abruptly. You do an analysis of that. Now, the fear, it may also include a much larger story, about not being capable of finding something better. Those are two different things, two different problems. Financial troubles after leaving a job, they are true financial concerns. Never being able to find a job, that's an assumption. That's your fear talking, right? So you need to separate between both of these. The first is fear, and the one is the actual risk involved. So the next step is to look honestly at what staying is costing you. We are often very good at calculating the potential cost of change, and surprisingly bad at calculating the cost of remaining where we are, right? What is the current pattern taking from you? Are you not being traumatized mentally by staying in a relationship where you have to prove your worth every day? Your energy, your confidence, your time, your relationship, your sense of self and sense of autonomy? What is going on? Are you in a situation where you have to constantly prove yourself to a point where you are physically exhausted, where your pain is invalidated? What is staying costing you? Is it costing you your self-respect? You need to analyze all these situations. You need to check all these situations. And then finally, you don't have to make the change, unnecessarily enormous. You don't have to go to that extent. You don't have to jump from one familiar place to completely unfamiliar place, overnight. You don't have to do that. You have to create a bridge. If a job is unhealthy, the first step is update your CV, research the alternatives, speak to someone in your field, and create a proper financial plan before you decide to leave. Right? That's a proper, uh, a roadmap of how you're going to do things, rather than just being clueless the moment you leave your job. Now, when you come to relationships, you may actually plan on how, if you want to escape an abusive relationship, get connected with people who can be safe for you. Um, Find alternatives, work on regulating your nervous system before you leave, and try to work on creating a 3 to 6 month plan for you in the future, that how are you going to survive and sustain if you leave this place, and set an affirmation that you do not require anybody's approval to be human. So get that thought out of your mind. These are not real thoughts that should make you remain in a situation where you're being abused, right? So do this analysis. And don't jump from one place to the other and then become homeless overnight. Plan. If you want to, if you're struggling with boundaries, the first step is to, have a small, respectful, polite, kind conversation with someone about having boundaries. Talk to them about it. Now, these are the ways you will be taking these steps. Now, you don't have to, force yourself, that as I started off my session with the idea that human beings are much more complicated than, just jumping from here and there and, making big decisions. There are some practical grounds that you have to follow in order to accept that change, right? We know why change is feeling difficult. Now we also know the ways to face those kind of decisions, and how to make those kinds of decisions. Now, of course, the goal is to not force yourself. The goal is actually to make you accepting of change in a way that doesn't feel strange to you, right? And it doesn't feel potentially bad or dangerous for you. So before we go offline, I want you to take a few minutes and for all the situations we talked about today. Now, for some of us, they may be job related. For some of us, it could be related to our relationships. It could be anything, any area in our lives where we are stuck between what we want and what we know. What we want and what we know. What we are afraid of choosing, right? The choice and the choice versus familiarity, or the familiarity versus uncertainty. Now, I want you to say the sentence out loud or write it down somewhere if you feel it's comfortable for you. That I know that I know I know I want this, but I keep returning to this. I know I want this, but I keep returning to that. You don't have to overthink it. Just write it. I know I want that particular dress, but I keep returning to the idea that spending more money on new clothes is going to end up with me regretting it later on. These are the kind of thoughts I have in my life. I don't spend a lot on shopping and clothes and all of that, because later on I think that I'm going to regret it. Although I don't in case I buy something, but this thought stops me that I'm going to regret it. So I know I want this, but I keep returning to that. Now, when you look at the second part of this question, right? You ask yourself, what does that familiar pattern give me? What is this thing that I keep returning to? What is this giving me? Now, what does it cost me? It's costing me my age, my years. And what does it give me? It gives you predictability. It protects you from rejection. And maybe it prevents conflict or disapproval of the people around you. Maybe it gives you temporary relief from anxiety. And it might even, mean that you don't have to take a difficult decision. We rarely change a pattern, by just telling ourselves to stop doing it. We have to understand that pattern. Why? What? So ask yourself that, what does this pattern cost me over time? Write that down. And then tell yourself that the healthier option, or the change feels unfamiliar because this. The unfamiliar, the uncertain option, the healthier option, it feels difficult and it feels unfamiliar because. And then ask yourself, what is one small step that would allow me to experience something healthier without demanding that it feels comfortably in all aspects for me? What is one small step that would allow me to experience something healthier without demanding that it feels completely comfortable? Think about it. And you make a healthier choice first. feel comfortable, you need to know this pattern. You make a healthier choice first. You feel uncomfortable, then you learn from the experience and then you adjust. And gradually in your life, you discover that what was once unfamiliar, it can still be normal. It sounds easier to listen in theory, but when you actually practice it, it will become easier by time. You don't have to become fearless. You will still have fears associated with every decision in your life, but then you do these steps that we shared together today. That how do we address that feeling of uncertainty? In a tough relationship situation, it may be conducive to take advice from a trustable, confident person. Correct? Yes, it is. You know, it is very important that you do, but it is someone, who is, again, as you said, trustable. Someone, I defined what safe means for a lot of people that day we were talking. I don't know which session it was, but reaching out to someone who you feel safe with, who is a safe person for you, more than trustworthy. They are safe. Safe includes all the aspects of, trustworthiness. It includes sense of belonging, non-judgment. It includes all of that. So someone who is safe, right? So you can do that. So before we go offline, I just want to say that, we can actually feel uncertain. That's okay. We don't need certainty about the whole life. We don't know if you're going to breathe in the next 10 seconds. We are not aware of that. We don't have control over our breath. So how can we have control over the next 40 years of our lives? But we do have control over our actions, the way we react, the way we decide. And that's through being mindful. That's through being aware and by being conscious rather than letting the unconscious and the assumptions things in our life decide the future. We do our best and let things unfold on their own. All right. So don't worry. The uncertainty is not the equal of danger. Right. So I hope today was an insightful session. Do you have any questions? If not, we can call it a day. All right. Okay. Thank you so much for joining. For those who will be watching it later on, don't forget to leave your questions in the comment section. We'll be happy to address them in our follow-up sessions. So, thank you so much for joining. Have a great day ahead. Bye-bye.